A woman screamed "Shut up" at Judge Judy in front of a packed courtroom, and what happened next became the most replayed moment in the show's 25-year history. But that's not even the shocking part. What Judge Judy said after 3 seconds of dead silence didn't just destroy this woman's case. It exposed something so humiliating that the defendant ran out of the courtroom in tears, and America couldn't stop talking about it for weeks. The studio courtroom in Los Angeles was electric that Tuesday afternoon. Stage lights blazed down, on the iconic bench where Judge Judith Sheindlin had delivered justice for over 2 decades. The gallery was packed with audience members, their phones already recording, sensing that today's case had the potential to become legendary. The air hummed with anticipation, that particular energy that comes right before something unforgettable happens. Camera operators adjusted their positions, zooming in on the defendant's face, a 42-year-old woman named Patricia Winters, who had already made 3 separate scenes in the hallway before filming even began. The bailiff had warned her twice. The production assistant had pulled her aside. Even her own lawyer, a weary-looking man with a briefcase full of losing arguments, had begged her to just stay calm and let the process work. But Patricia Winters didn't do calm. She did entitlement. She did outrage. She did "I know my rights and you can't tell me what to do." And today she was about to learn exactly what happens when you bring that energy into Judge Judy's courtroom. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The case itself seemed simple on paper. Patricia was being sued by her former landlord, Marcus Chen, for $3,800 in unpaid rent and property damage. Marcus had documentation. He had photographs of the trashed apartment, holes punched in walls, carpet stained beyond repair, a broken refrigerator door hanging off its hinges. He had text messages where Patricia admitted she was behind on rent but promised to pay. Text messages where she then blamed him for everything. Text messages where she called him names that can't be repeated on television. He had witnesses. He had receipts. He had timestamps. Patricia had excuses. She had attitude. And she had the unshakable belief that if she just talked loud enough and interrupted enough times, she could bend reality to her version of events. She'd done it before in other situations. She'd screamed her way out of restaurant bills. She'd bullied retail workers into giving her discounts. She'd turned every minor inconvenience into a full-scale production where she was the victim and everyone else was the villain. But Judge Judy Sheindlin wasn't a restaurant manager or a retail worker. At 78 years old, she had spent over 40 years in the legal system, first as a prosecutor in New York City's family court, then as a judge, and now as the highest-paid television personality in America. She had a reputation that preceded her like thunder before lightning. She demolished liars, she eviscerated fools, and she had absolutely zero tolerance for disrespect. The stage was set, the cameras were rolling, and nobody in that courtroom, not the audience, not the crew, not even the bailiff who had seen everything, could have predicted that in less than 8 minutes Patricia Winters would commit career suicide on national television. And Judge Judy would deliver a response so cold, so calculated, and so devastatingly perfect that it would be studied in communication classes and replayed millions of times across every social media platform in existence. Before we get into exactly what Patricia screamed and the brutal 3-word response that left her speechless, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you're about to witness one of the most satisfying courtroom destructions ever caught on camera, and you won't want to miss a single second of what's coming next. Judge Judith Sheindlin sat behind her bench with the posture of someone who had nothing left to prove. Her black robe was immaculate, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the case file in front of her. At 78, her sharp eyes missed nothing. Every micro-expression, every nervous fidget, every tell that someone was about to lie to her face. She had been doing this since before most of the audience members were born. She had seen every excuse, heard every sob story, watched every con artist try their luck. And she had dismantled them all with surgical precision. Her reputation was legendary for good reason. In her years as a family court judge in Manhattan, she had handled over 20,000 cases. She had dealt with custody battles that would break most people's hearts. She had faced down abusers who thought they could intimidate her. She had stared into the eyes of criminals who underestimated her because she was a woman. Every single one of them learned the same lesson. Judge Judy Sheindlin bowed to no one. Her television show had become a cultural phenomenon precisely because she refused to play games. While other courtroom shows relied on theatrics and manufactured drama, Judge Judy delivered something America was desperately hungry for. Real consequences. Actual accountability. The satisfying sound of someone who thought they were above the rules getting exactly what they deserved. Her catchphrases had become part of the national vocabulary. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Beauty fades, but dumb is forever. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true. She didn't just judge cases. She delivered life lessons wrapped in Brooklyn tough wisdom that cut through nonsense like a hot knife through butter. The bailiff, Petrie Hawkins Bird, stood at attention near the bench. He had been with Judge Judy since the show's first episode in 1996. 25 years of watching her work. 25 years of seeing defendants walk in thinking they could outsmart her, only to leave humbled and several $1,000s poorer. Bird had developed a sixth sense for when things were about to go sideways. And today, watching Patricia Winters fidget in her seat, rolling her eyes at the ceiling, sighing dramatically every few seconds, he knew. This was going to be one of those episodes, the kind that would be replayed on YouTube forever, the kind that would trend on social media for weeks, the kind where someone's attitude wrote a check their evidence couldn't cash. Judge Judy closed the case file and looked up, her gaze settling first on the plaintiff, Marcus Chen. He stood straight, hands clasped in front of him, his expression calm but tired. The kind of tired that comes from dealing with someone like Patricia for months. He had the documentation folder tucked under his arm, organized with tabs and highlighted sections. He was prepared, he was respectful, and he was about to get justice. Then Judge Judy's eyes moved to Patricia Winters, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Patricia was sprawled in her chair like she was waiting for a bus, not standing in front of a judge. Her arms were crossed tight across her chest. Her jaw was set in that particular way that screamed, "I'm the victim here and you're all idiots if you can't see it." She wore a leopard print blouse that was 2 sizes too small, and jeans that had no business being in a courtroom. Her blonde hair, clearly a boxed eye job gone wrong, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. And her face was already twisted into an expression of preemptive outrage. Like she had already decided this whole thing was unfair before a single word had been spoken. Judge Judy let the silence stretch just long enough to make Patricia uncomfortable. It was a technique she had perfected over decades. Silence made liars nervous. It made the guilty squirm. It stripped away the bravado and left people exposed. Patricia shifted in her seat, uncrossed and recrossed her arms, looked everywhere except at the judge. Finally, Judge Judy spoke, her voice carrying that distinctive New York accent that could slice through steel. Case number JJ-4792. Marcus Chen versus Patricia Winters. The plaintiff is suing for $3,800 in unpaid rent and property damage. Both of you, step forward. Marcus moved immediately, his posture respectful, his movements measured. Patricia, on the other hand, heaved herself up with an exaggerated sigh, as if being asked to stand in a courtroom was the most unreasonable request anyone had ever made. She shuffled forward, her body language screaming defiance. The audience noticed. Camera operators zoomed in on her face, capturing the eye roll she probably thought no one saw. Judge Judy saw it. She saw everything, but she said nothing. Not yet. She turned to Marcus first, her expression softening slightly. "Mr. Chen, you're the landlord?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied, his voice steady and respectful. "And this is about unpaid rent and damage to your property?" "Yes, Your Honor. She owed me 3 months' rent, totaling $3,000, and when she finally moved out, the apartment was destroyed. I have photographs, text messages, and repair estimates totaling $800. Judge Judy nodded, flipping open her file to examine the evidence Marcus had submitted. Her eyes scanned the pages quickly, professionally, her expression, revealing nothing but anyone who knew her could see the wheels turning. She was already building her case, already seeing through whatever nonsense Patricia was about to spew. The photographs showed holes punched in drywall, carpet stained with what looked like wine and God knows what else, a refrigerator door hanging at an odd angle, cabinet doors ripped off their hinges. This wasn't normal wear and tear. This was destruction. Then she turned to Patricia and the air in the courtroom seemed to crystallize. Every audience member leaned forward slightly. The cameras tightened their focus. Even Bailiff Bird straightened up, ready for whatever was about to happen. "Miss Winters," Judge Judy said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp as razors. "What's your defense?" And that's when Patricia's mouth opened. And what came out was exactly what everyone expected. A wall of excuses delivered with the confidence of someone who truly believed their own lies. "That apartment was a dump when I moved in," she started, her voice already rising in volume, already taking on that aggressive edge. He never fixed anything. The sink leaked, the heat didn't work in winter, there were bugs everywhere. Cockroaches! I shouldn't have to pay rent for a place that wasn't livable. It's not my fault he's a slumlord who doesn't maintain his properties. Judge Judy's eyebrow arched slightly, a movement so small but so significant that regular viewers knew exactly what it meant. Someone was about to get eviscerated. Did you report these issues to him in writing? She asked, her voice calm, almost gentle. It was the calm before the storm. Well, no, but I told him. Patricia shot back, her tone indignant, like the very question was offensive. I told him like 1,000,000 times. I called him. I texted him. Judge Judy glanced down at the case file, her finger tracing a line of text. According to Mr. Chen's phone records, you called him exactly twice during your entire tenancy, both times to complain about late fees. You never once mentioned bugs, heating issues, or plumbing problems. Patricia's face flushed red, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. That's because I knew he wouldn't do anything, she snapped, her voice getting louder. Why waste my time? He's a terrible landlord. Everyone in that building complained about him. Judge Judy's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Do you have witnesses? Any other tenants who will testify to these conditions? Patricia hesitated just for a moment, and that hesitation was everything. Well, no, I don't have witnesses here today, but that doesn't mean it's not true. The audience exchanged glances. Some shook their heads. Others pulled out their phones, already sensing this was going to be good. Marcus Chen stood quietly, his folder of evidence growing more powerful with every word Patricia spoke. She was burying herself, and Judge Judy was letting her dig. The trap was being set piece by piece, and Patricia was walking right into it, with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences before in her entire life. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her hands folded on the bench, her expression unreadable. Miss Winters, let me ask you something. When you moved into this apartment, did you sign a lease? Of course I signed a lease, Patricia said, rolling her eyes like it was the stupidest question she'd ever heard. And in that lease, was there a clause about how to report maintenance issues? Patricia's jaw tightened. I don't remember every single thing in the lease. It was like 20 pages long. Judge Judy's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Chen, can you tell me what page 7 of your standard lease agreement says about maintenance requests? Marcus opened his folder with practiced ease, pulling out a highlighted document. Page 7, Section 3, Your Honor. All maintenance issues must be reported in writing via email or through the tenant portal within 24 hours of discovery. Failure to report issues in writing waives the tenant's right to withhold rent or claim uninhabitable conditions. Judge Judy nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Patricia's face. Did you read your lease before you signed it, Miss Winters? Patricia shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her arms crossing tighter across her chest. I skimmed it. Who reads every single word of those things? They're designed to confuse people. Judge Judy's voice dropped to that deadly calm tone that made seasoned attorneys nervous. I do, lawyers do, responsible adults do, people who plan to honor their commitments do. The courtroom fell silent except for the barely audible whir of camera equipment. Patricia's face was turning a deeper shade of red, a combination of embarrassment and rage building like a pressure cooker. But instead of taking the hint, instead of recognizing that she was losing ground with every word, she pushed forward. Well, maybe if landlords didn't write leases like they're trying to trick people, we'd actually read them. She shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Maybe if Mr. Chen cared more about his tenants and less about collecting rent checks, I wouldn't have had to live in a dump for 8 months. Judge Judy let her finish, let her hang herself with her own words. Then she turned to Marcus. Mr. Chen, how many units do you own? 3, Your Honor. Small residential properties. I manage them myself. And in the past 5 years, how many tenants have sued you for uninhabitable conditions or filed complaints with the housing authority? None, Your Honor. And how many times have you had to sue tenants for unpaid rent or damages? This is the first time in 12 years, Your Honor. Judge Judy nodded, making a note on her pad. She looked back at Patricia, whose confidence was finally starting to crack around the edges. Miss Winters, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Do you have any written evidence, any photographs, any documentation whatsoever that proves these conditions existed before you moved in or during your tenancy? Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Her hands were fidgeting now, pulling at the hem of her leopard print blouse. I didn't think to take pictures, she finally said, her voice smaller now but still defiant. I was dealing with it. I was trying to survive in that place. Judge Judy removed her glasses, placed them on the bench, and that's when everyone in the courtroom knew. The explosion was coming, and Patricia Winters had just lit the fuse herself. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Miss Winters, let me explain something to you. This is a court of law, not a court of I feel like. Not a court of I didn't think I needed proof. This is a place where facts matter. Evidence matters. And right now, you have provided exactly zero evidence to support your claims. Patricia's face contorted, her mouth opening to interrupt, but Judge Judy raised one finger. I'm not finished. You claim the apartment was uninhabitable, yet you have no photos. You claim you reported issues constantly, yet there's no record of it. You claim Mr. Chen is a slumlord, yet he has 12 years of good standing and you're his first problem tenant. So let me ask you directly, did you trash that apartment? Patricia's eyes went wide, genuine outrage flooding her features. How dare you! I did not trash anything. That place was already falling apart. Judge Judy's expression hardened. Then explain to me why the photos Mr. Chen took the day you moved out show fresh holes in the walls. Explain the wine stains on carpet that was professionally cleaned 2 weeks before you moved in. Explain the cabinet doors ripped off their hinges. Patricia was shaking now, her hands balled into fists. Those were already there. He's lying. He probably did that himself to frame me. The audience gasped. Even Marcus Chen's eyes widened at the audacity. Judge Judy's jaw tightened. So now you're accusing him of insurance fraud and perjury? Without evidence? Patricia threw her hands up in exasperation. You're not listening to me. You're just like everyone else, taking his side because he's got documents and I don't. This whole system is rigged. Judge Judy stood up, something she rarely did, and the entire courtroom went silent. Miss Winters, I have been practicing law for over 40 years. I was a prosecutor in family court where I dealt with actual victims every single day. People who suffered real abuse, real neglect, real injustice. And you standing here lying through your teeth, disrespecting this court and playing victim when you clearly destroyed someone's property and refused to pay your obligations, is an insult to every real victim I ever represented. Patricia's face was purple now, tears of rage building in her eyes, and that's when she made the biggest mistake of her life. Her voice rose to a scream that echoed off every wall. Shut up! The words hung in the air like a grenade. The audience froze. Cameras zoomed in on Patricia's twisted face, then panned to Judge Judy's expression, which had gone from stern to absolutely glacial. The bailiff took half a step forward, his hand instinctively moving toward Patricia. Marcus Chen stood there with his mouth open, unable to process what had just happened, and Judge Judy, Judge Judith Scheindlin, the woman who had faced down murderers and abusers without flinching, slowly sat back down in her chair. She placed her hands flat on the bench, and then she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't an amused smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just watched their prey walk directly into the trap. The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. And then Judge Judy spoke, her voice so cold it could freeze fire. Excuse me? Judge Judy's voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled every corner of the courtroom. Did you just tell me to shut up? Patricia realized her mistake immediately, her eyes widening, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I didn't mean, Judge Judy raised her hand, silencing her instantly. No, you don't get to talk anymore. You've talked enough. Now you're going to listen. She stood again, her small frame somehow towering over everyone in the room. In 40 years of practicing law, in 25 years of this television show, in over 20,000 cases, nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever told me to shut up in my courtroom. Congratulations, Miss Winters. You just made history. Patricia's lips trembled, tears starting to stream down her face. Your Honor, please, I'm sorry I didn't save it. Judge Judy's voice cut through her excuses like a scalpel. You came into my courtroom with no evidence, no respect, and no accountability. You lied about the conditions of that apartment. You destroyed Mr. Chen's property. You refused to pay rent you legally owed. And when confronted with facts, instead of taking responsibility like an adult, you screamed at a judge. Judge Judy picked up her gavel, and the entire room held its breath. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,800. And Miss Winters, let me tell you something else. The camera zoomed in tight on Judge Judy's face. Your behavior today tells me everything I need to know about why you're in this situation. You don't respect authority. You don't respect contracts. You don't respect other people's property. And clearly, you don't respect yourself. Get out of my courtroom. The gavel came down with a crack that sounded like thunder. Patricia stood frozen, mascara running down her face, her mouth hanging open in shock. If you're as satisfied as that entire courtroom was watching Patricia get exactly what she deserved, smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what you would have said if you were Judge Judy. And don't go anywhere, because the fallout from this moment is absolutely insane. Patricia stood there for another 3 seconds, her brain unable to process what had just happened. The bailiff stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. Ma'am, you need to leave now. And that's when Patricia broke. She let out a sob that sounded more like a wail, turned on her heel and ran out of the courtroom, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. The doors slammed behind her, and for a moment nobody moved. Then the audience erupted, not in polite applause but in genuine thunderous approval. People were on their feet. Some were literally cheering. Others were laughing in disbelief at what they'd just witnessed. Marcus Chen stood there looking dazed, like he couldn't believe justice had been served so completely and so publicly. Judge Judy sat back down, put her glasses back on, and looked at Marcus with an expression that was almost kind. "Mr. Chen, you'll get your money, and next time, do a better credit check before you rent to someone." "Yes, Your Honor." "Thank you, Your Honor." She waved him away, and as he walked out with his folder of evidence, he had the slightest smile on his face. The smile of a man who had been vindicated. Within 2 hours, the clip was online. Within 4 hours, it was trending on every social media platform. "Shut Up to Judge Judy" became the #1 trending topic on Twitter with over 300,000 tweets. TikTok exploded with reaction videos, people screaming at their phones, reenacting Patricia's meltdown. YouTube channels dedicated to courtroom drama uploaded the clip with titles like "Karen Gets Destroyed by Judge Judy" and "Most Satisfying Judge Judy Moment Ever." The views climbed into the millions. News outlets picked it up. Entertainment websites wrote think pieces about respect and accountability. Legal experts analyzed Judge Judy's response, praising her restraint and her surgical dismantling of Patricia's lies. And Patricia Winters herself became a cautionary tale, a meme, a symbol of what happens when entitlement meets consequences. But here's the real lesson that Judge Judy taught that day. Respect isn't about power. It's about recognizing that your actions have consequences, and that no amount of screaming, lying, or playing victim will change the facts. Patricia thought she could bulldoze her way through life, intimidate people into giving her what she wanted, and avoid accountability by being loud enough. Judge Judy showed her and showed America that in the end the truth always wins. Facts don't care about your feelings. Evidence doesn't bend to your excuses. And judges like Judy Scheindlin don't back down from bullies. That's why Judge Judy has been on television for 25 years, and why moments like this will be replayed forever. If you loved watching this Karen learn the hardest lesson of her life, subscribe to this channel for more jaw-dropping courtroom moments where entitled people get exactly what's coming to them. Hit that like button if you think Judge Judy handled this perfectly, and drop a comment below with the most satisfying courtroom moment you've ever seen. Thanks for watching, and remember, respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost you everything. I'll see you in the next one.